I was teaching on the topic of the Bible, its foundation of the arts, and application of ministry for a missions organization in the mountains of Brazil. There were 40 young people taking part, most of them members of the same church. Their pastor had come along to accompany them. About 3/4 of the way through the first morning session, the pastor stood up and asked me permission to say a word to the students. He told them he had studied and preached the Bible for about 40 years. He had never been taught these things. He was so excited about it that he committed himself to study the Bible again from that perspective. He called on the students to sit up and listen because they were learning something very relevant for their ministries. This short moment illustrates a classic divide that exists between the world of theologians and church ministry training and the world of artists. For a long time under this paradigm, being a musician and a missionary, I felt my ministry had to fit into generally accepted boxes. It was only 3 decades later that I realized that God had not called me to choose between music and real ministry, but to be a good steward of all of the gifts He had entrusted me with. You may be asking, why is this so relevant? Why does it matter? Let me give you 5 reasons. We have God's example or model. The role of the arts is grounded first of all in the Scriptures. In theology and ministry training, we are usually introduced to the basic fact that you can find arts in the Bible, such as the poetic style of the Psalms and music. But what is overlooked is how much the arts are integrated into the very fabric of God's revelation. The very fact that God chose to communicate with mankind through artistic forms an abundant number of times demonstrates that our faith needs to be experienced and communicated in many more ways than the typical modern sermon or by propositional bullet points. We are to worship God with heart, soul, and mind. The arts help us to engage with cognitive information in an experiential way, bringing together heart, soul, and mind. We are instructed to worship God with all of our being. It matters for mentorship, discipleship. Christians with especially creative gifts, the so-called creatives, need to be mentored or discipled towards a faithful stewardship of their gifts. Those being trained for leadership, pastors, evangelists, teachers, etc., must first understand the value of such giftings for the kingdom of God so that they can exercise good mentorship in the lives of creatives. Stewardship of gifts. If you are called to ministry, you are not necessarily being called to forsake less spectacular, nonverbal, or other gifts that do not fit into the classic types, such as preaching, oratory, missionary church planting, evangelist, etc. Rather, God is likely to be calling you to exercise the total gift or talent mix you have received from Him in your service to Him and to others. Last but not least, we have the testimony of other artists or ministry leaders. This pastor in Brazil I mentioned illustrates this well. Multiple books and articles highlight this divide and seek greater integration. In a nutshell, what can arts understanding do to transform theological education, and what are we going to do about it? It can help educators teach theology. It can help theologians understand scriptures with mind and heart. It can help leaders expand the scope of their ministries. It can equip new leaders to know how to apply the arts to their church ministries. It can equip them to mentor creatives in their churches so they can be faithful stewards of their gifts. So having the perspective of a musician with training in both arts and theology, a personal ministry journey that experienced this divide with international experience and cultural flexibility, in collaboration with the global Ethnodoxology Network and ACT International, we have spearheaded an initiative called Theology and Arts in Ministry. TAM, for short, aims to help bridge this gap at the root, that is, no later than at the point when Christians are receiving academic or practical training for ministry. We are mobilizing to help bring training in the biblical foundations of the arts and many other related topics to conferences, seminaries, colleges, universities, and yes, the local church. In short, the goal is not to let a seminarian escape into ministry without receiving training in the biblical foundation of the arts. To strengthen this initiative, we have become a part of ACT International, Artists in Christian Testimony, a missions organization focused on arts and ministry with over 600 representatives serving all across the world. In order to advance these goals, our costs at this time do not involve a salary, but do include travel and conference costs, video production, web presence, etc. We would like to ask you to consider partnering with this initiative through prayer and giving on a monthly basis by using the link for Theology and Arts and Ministry under ACT International. TAM Initiative, integrating theological training and arts perspectives for missional living.